What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Then We Eat. On today's episode, we're going to be doing something a little more fun. We're going to be getting those hands all nice and dirty. On today's show, we're going to be making Italian meatballs. Now before we get started on the main part of the ingredients, we've got to start with the breadcrumbs. We got to let those soak for about 20 minutes, half an hour, somewhere in there. So first thing you're going to do, you're going to get about a third of a cup of breadcrumbs. And then we're going to add to that a half of a cup of milk. Normally you want to use regular milk for this. We had some buttermilk kicking around. I'm just going to go ahead and use that. Should give it a little bit different of a flavor, but should be just as tasty anyway. So we'll add that to the bowl. We're gonna give it a quick stir around, and then we're gonna let it sit for half an hour, and while that's going on, we'll get our other ingredients going. So the first thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut our onion. We'll start by taking the top of it off, and then removing the outside skin. Now that you've got that skin removed, you've got to dice this onion. You can do it a number of ways. A lot of people will cut it into rings and then dice it from there. One of the easiest ways I find is you're just gonna score it. Not quite all the way through, but almost all the way through, going this way. Then you're gonna do the same thing going this way. And then when you chop it, it'll come in a nice dice. So I'll show you here. So you're just gonna wanna take it and just, basically what you're looking to do is go all the way to the very back of the onion without actually cutting all the way through. So as you can see here, we've got some slits that almost starts to open it up like an accordion. I don't know if you can see that or not. Yeah, you can kind of see it there now. So you're just kind of looking to open it up like an accordion. Once you've done that, we'll cut it the other way. So I'll go ahead, I'll finish slicing this up, I'll show you what it looks like, then we'll cut it the other way. You got it cut up all nice, and you can see they're you can kind of see they're all nice and slit like an accordion. So now we'll go ahead, we're gonna cut it, same idea, only this time, you're gonna go the other way. You're gonna go from the top. So again, same thing. It's nice and easy, and you can see it's kind of turning into strings of onion now, which is exactly what you're looking for. So now you've got this nice bloomin' onion looking onion here. It's falling apart a little bit, as you would expect. All you're gonna do now, once all the pieces fall out, you're just gonna put it flat like you had it originally. And you're just gonna chop it, and it's gonna chop into nice, perfect chunks of onion, like it was diced. Just like that. And as you can see, I'll pick some up and show you here. They're just nicely diced pieces of onion. So it's absolutely perfect, and it's nice and easy, and a lot less effort to try to go over it and dice it and go over it and dice it if you cut it into rings, because then you're chop, 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 and then chop, 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 chop the other way, and it's just back and forth until it's done. This way, nice and simple, easy solution. There you go. The onion's nice and diced. I may not using all of it. There's quite a bit of onion here for 2 pounds of meat, but we'll go ahead. We'll prep the rest of our ingredients. You're supposed to cook the onion before you do the rest of the ingredients. In this case, because I'm filming a video, it will be a lot easier for me to just gather the rest of the ingredients here and then move over to my next location. So we're gonna go ahead, we'll mix all the ingredients, then we'll cook the onion and add that to our meat. By then, hopefully our breadcrumbs should be done and we can carry on. And while I have the cutting board out, we're gonna carry on with our parsley here. There's a lot of stem in this parsley that I picked. It is fresh. So one of the things you can do to make it a little easier for yourself before you start cutting up your parsley, just kind of pull the tips of it off the stem. Then you don't have to cut around those stems quite so much. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that, and we'll see you when I'm done. I'll cut it up. Remember earlier when we were trying to avoid chopping the onion? Unfortunately now we have no choice. So again, basically the same idea. You're just gonna kind of go ahead and just chop it in one direction and then turn around and chop it in the other direction until you got really nice and small pieces of parsley. And much like the onion, you are going to want to make this pretty small because you don't want large pieces of parsley sticking in your teeth when you're trying to eat your meatballs. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. I'll get a mixing bowl out and we'll carry on with the rest of our ingredients. Okay, so now it's time for our meat mixture. So we'll throw a pound of beef into a bowl. We'll add a pound of my sausage meat. You can use ground pork if you'd like. To that, I'm going to crack in 2 eggs. If you crack your eggs on a flat surface, they say that you get a better crack and you won't have quite so many shells. As I say that, I found a tiny shell in my egg. Now we'll add the parsley. Used about 1/4 cup of well-packed fresh parsley. You just put it in your measuring cup. You're probably looking at closer to about 1/2 cup. We're also going to add some garlic to this. Now I'm going to cheat. I'm going to add chopped garlic instead of fresh stuff. This time of year, it's a little difficult to get fresh garlic anyway. So we'll just go ahead. We'll add about 3 cloves or so of chopped garlic. Also need about 2 teaspoons of salt. I actually don't like cooking with a lot of salt, so I might keep it a bit short. And some pepper. Looking for about 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Need a 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. We also need some Italian seasoning. I don't have any made up. Most of the ingredients are pretty simple. Thyme, basil, oregano, parsley, which we added already. I'm going to throw some extra garlic powder in, even though there's garlic in it already, because I really like garlic. Aside from that, you can add pepper flakes if you'd like. I already added those as well, so we won't bother. And I'm going to add a little bit of smoked paprika as well. I love the smell and the flavor of paprika. I think it'll go really nicely in this, so we'll add that as well. So we're going to add thyme, basil, and oregano, about 1/4 teaspoon of each. Probably about 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then maybe about 1/4 teaspoon of paprika as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add those now. Now I'll add 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese to this. I'm going to cook the onions. I've got to add the onions and the breadcrumbs to this. I'll go ahead, I'll do that. I'll come back and add them. Got to mix it all together and put it in the refrigerator for an hour after that. So let's move over to the stove and fry up those onions. Okay, so we're over at our stove now. We're going to turn our stove on to medium heat. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to that, and then we're going to let that heat up. Then we'll throw in our onions. Okay, so our pan should be plenty hot enough by now. I went ahead and I measured out 3/4 cup of onions, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to cook those up. The rest of the onion I have left, I have probably about another 3/4 cup there. We'll set those aside. We'll put them in the fridge. They can be used for another purpose later on. And don't worry, if that looks like an awful lot of onion, it's really not. Once you sweat these down, which is what we're doing now, they are going to shrink. You're not going to end up with nearly as much onion as what you started with. So as these onions start to cook down, you're going to want to dial the temperature back. You want to sweat them at first, turn them a bit of a translucent color. Then once you've hit that point, you're going to turn the temperature way down and let them cook slowly until they're really nice and soft. You want to make sure they're nice and soft so that you've got a really nice, airy and juicy kind of a meatball. If these onions aren't cooked quite enough, get a bit of a crunch from the onion. It's probably not something that you'll be looking for. So I think we're at the point now where we can turn our stove way down. So we're going to take it, we're going to turn it from medium to close to low. Now we're going to let those onions just slowly cook down the rest of the way until they're where I like them. Yeah, I find maybe between low and medium low might be a good spot for now. You'll have to kind of make that decision on your own based on your stove. Our stove will cook cold at times and it'll cook hot at times, so I might have to adjust multiple times over the next few minutes till I find where I'm looking for. But we'll let those cook slowly and keep adjusting as needed. Frying pan I'm using is obviously quite a bit too big for the purpose I'm using it for, but I am going to be cooking something else later on today. So to save dishes, I'll just use this one now and reuse it again later. I'd say those onions are pretty good there. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn the stove off. I'll move all of my cameras over to our other shooting location. I'll add the onions, the breadcrumbs, mix it all together, start making the meatballs, and then throw them in the oven. So give me 5 minutes. Well, it'll be like 3 seconds for you, but give me 5 minutes and we'll get on to the next step. Okay, we're back over at the cutting board now. It's time to go ahead and add our onions. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Then we'll add our breadcrumbs, and it'll be time to start making meatballs. Our breadcrumbs are a little thick. Hopefully it turns out okay. Now our breadcrumbs. If I don't like the texture, I can just add a little bit more milk to it. I'm actually going to start by using a spatula and kind of mixing it around. I want to try to get those dry ingredients incorporated before I use my hands. Try to avoid getting as much of that dry stuff stuck to my hands as I can. Try to break the meat up a little bit and then just kind of try to incorporate as much of this stuff into it as you can get. A lot easier with your hands, but like I said, I like to try to get the dry ingredients mixed in first. I'd say it's about time to use your hands. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my hands. That way a lot of the meat doesn't stick to it and it just keeps falling back into the bowl. Just keeps your hands a little cleaner. So I'll go ahead, I'll get them wet now. They don't need to be soaking wet, but they are wet. So now as you can see, next to no meat left on my hands. Just go ahead, we'll mix all that up with my hands. Make sure it's all nice and incorporated. Looks like it is. Time to start balling. So I have 2 cookie sheets here. I have to use 2 smaller ones because most of our bigger ones are occupied right now. So go ahead. I'm going to put parchment paper down on each one just so they don't stick to them. Alright, it's time to start balling. I've got this cookie scoop here. I think it's actually a cookie scoop, but looks a lot like an ice cream scoop. I'm not exactly sure what size it is, but we're going to be making meatball lasagna afterwards with the meatballs. So I'd say that this is a pretty good size baller for that. So we'll go ahead, we'll scoop them out, then I'll put them on the cookie sheet, roll them all out nice, and into the oven they go. Okay, so as you can see here, I do have a little bit of meat left in the bowl. I've run out of room on my cookie sheets. It's perfect anyway. I've got to cook some to see how they taste, so I'll go ahead, I'll fry that up, make sure they taste okay before I put these into the oven. So I'll be back in a few minutes after I fried one of these up. Okay, so I went ahead and I tried the meatballs. They're very, very nice. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get my hands all nice and wet. I'll roll all the meatballs out, preheat the oven, and then into the oven they go. Basically all you're looking to do is try and make them as round as you can. They're mostly there already just from the ice cream scoop, so you're more or less just rounding the bottom off. Basically that's what you're looking for. Nice rounded meatballs, ready for the oven. There we have it, 33 meatballs, all nice and rolled out, ready for the oven. I'm going to go ahead, I'll throw those in the oven now. In about 15 minutes or so we'll take them out, assuming they're cooked, and they'll be ready to be tried. So we'll see you in 15 minutes. Alright, the meatballs are finished, all nice and good. Plenty fatty. Looks like the buttermilk started to leak out in them, which is to be expected, but otherwise they look very, very good. I'll take one of these, I'll put it on a plate, give it a try, let you know how they taste. As you can see, they look very, very good. Should be perfect on just about anything. I'm making these today with the intent on having meatball lasagna with them. So that's what I'm doing them for. And check out the meatball lasagna video coming probably next week. Without further ado, let's give her a test, see how she tastes. The first thing I noticed, just by looking at it, they're nice and firm. but plenty cuttable with a fork, which is absolutely perfect. It's exactly what you'd like. Now we'll give it a shot, see how they taste. Oh yeah, those are really good. Adding my sausage in was a nice touch. You get that sausage flavor in there, but it's not overpowering. You can taste the smokiness from the paprika. You've got the onion in there. That's a very, very nice flavor. And I think it's gonna go very, very good in our meatball lasagna. So that's it for this video. Hit like if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share with everybody you know, and let us know down below. What would you like to see us cook next? Or better yet, what would you put in your meatballs? And don't forget, first we cook, then we eat. Oh, so good.